Welcome to all. Child development cannot be perceived through a single lens. We should see child's development in various perspectives. In today's session, we will discuss about the bioecological perspective in child development and its educational implication. In this video, we will discuss bioecological perspective, different layers of bioecological perspective, the interaction between the different layers in child's development and educational implications of bioecological perspective. After watching this video, you should be able to develop understanding about the bioecological perspective in child development, to classify the layers of environment that affect child's development, to examine how each layer affects the development of a child, to identify the educational implications of bioecological perspective. When we think of bioecological perspective, we have to know the context of children. Child development is conceptualized as a transactional process with an emphasis placed on the interplay of individual and context, as well as on the interactions between and among context. Bioecological perspective, it was first stated as ecological perspective, and the propounder was Uri Bronfenbrenner. He stated about the ecology of human development, and later on he found that ecology and biology is very important in understanding the development of a child. Hence the term bioecological developed. He stated that in order to understand a child's development, we have to know the interaction that is taking place between different layers of environment. He stated that there are concentric circles model of human development. In that model, the child is at the center and the context of development radiating out from the individual child's experience in proximal to distal order. Bronfenbrenner's ecological model suggests that socialization occurs in context, and the child is in the center of concentric circles which are modeled by various layers of context. Hence, we can state that to study a child, especially the development of a child, we should not look at the child and his or her immediate environment. We should study the interaction that is taking place between various layers of environment. What are the various layers of the environment? It can be classified as microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem and macrosystem. And we can see that besides these layers, there is another layer which stands away from them, that is the chronosystem. Let me discuss each layer in detail. When we look at the microsystem, we can state that this is the immediate environment of the child. Why it is known as the immediate environment? You can see what are the different structures of this environment. It consists of family, religious institutions, peers, neighborhood play area, school or daycare, health services. So these are the different structures in the layer of microsystem. And when we look at this layer, we can see that it has bidirectional influences, which the term used by Bronfenbrenner. Why it has bidirectional influences? Take the case of family. The attitudes and behaviors of parents influence the child, and vice versa. That is, the attitude of child and beliefs of the child influence the parents. Hence, the term bidirectional influences was used by Brenner. And in order to understand a child's microsystem, we should understand the interaction that is taking place between these various layers. Coming to the family structure, we can see that there are single parent family structure, cohabitant family structure, then nuclear family structure, extended family structure, and the child who is growing up in different discomfort zones also. And among these different family structures, the nurturing setup is different. How the child feels or how the child's attitude changes, that all affects the growing up of a child. Similarly, we can see that the interaction within the microsystem typically involve personal relationships with family members, classmates, teachers and caregivers. How these groups or individuals interact with the children will affect how they grow. Similarly, how children react to people in their microsystem will also influence how they treat the children in return. More nurturing and more supportive interactions and relationships will understandably foster children's improved development. Now we will discuss the second layer, that is the mesosystem. We can state mesosystem which contains the relationship between the microsystems. The mesosystem encompasses the interaction of the different microsystems which children find themselves in. It is, in essence, a system of microsystems that may be family or the child and the neighborhood. So there are different microsystems that comes under this mesosystem, and it involves linkages between home and school, between peer group and family, and between family and community. If a child's parents are actively involved in the friendship of their child, for example, they invite the child's friends over to their house from time to time and spend time with them, then the child's development is affected positively through harmony and like-mindedness. However, if the child's parents dislike their child's peers and openly criticize them, then the child experiences disequilibrium and conflicting emotions, which will likely lead to negative development. When we think of neighborhood as a context of child development, how we can perceive the neighborhood and how it influences the development of a child. Let me have a brief discussion on this point. Neighborhoods and schools are the two contexts in which children spend vast amounts of their time for making friends, forming opinions and attitudes, and learning social and academic skills that help them to lead their daily life. Neighborhoods determine the quality and variety of physical environments in children's daily lives, the peers with whom children will play, the adults they will have as role models, the amount of violence and chaos to which they will be exposed, and the schools that they will attend. When we think of the impact of neighborhood, there the quality and quantity and also the diversity of and access to recreational, social, educational, health, transport and employment services in the community directly affect child's outcomes as well as the outcomes of their parents. Think of the socio-economic background of the neighborhood. It has a detrimental impact on parental mental health, parental behavior, that is the parental style, supervision and monitoring, routines and structure, and the quality of the home environment, which in turn affects the development of the child. Neighborhood social processes, that is, the social connections between parents in the neighborhood that encourage trust, support and a shared understanding and norms of behavior, are undermined for those living in more disadvantaged areas, which then affects child outcomes. Neighborhood socio-economic composition may affect the quantity and quality of institutional resources available to children, such as schools, health and social services, recreational programs and the like. Neighborhood composition is thought to contribute to community norms regarding both parents and children's behavior. Then we are going to discuss about how school plays as a context of child development. There we know that children will acquire a great amount of knowledge and skills. There will be social and emotional growth. Children's daily experiences at school affect their behavior, beliefs and well-being. The cumulative effects of children's schooling experiences strongly contribute to their lives as adults, including future educational opportunities, career choices and lifetime earnings. Next layer, that is the exosystem. It pertains to the linkages that may exist between two or more settings, one of which may not contain the developing children but affect them indirectly nonetheless. Based on the findings of Bronfenbrenner, people and places that children may not directly interact with may still have an impact on their lives. Such places and people may include the parents' workplaces, extended family members and mass media. When we think of mass media as a context of child development, there I would like to quote American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Communications and Media. Because children have high levels of exposure, media have greater access and time to shape young people's attitudes and actions than do parents or teachers, replacing them as educators, role models and the primary sources of information about the world and how one behaves in it. Children in the 21st century learn and develop in the context of electronic media, and more than that, nowadays we know how much time children are spending for online learning. Increasing use of all kinds of media, then creation and use of media designed for children even aged 2 and under. And we can see that through this media, children are able to develop the habit of multitasking, in which they are using the media as well as they are doing texting on a cell phone while watching creation. Use of media platforms such as the smartphone are digital, interactive and easily transportable. And when we think how do media use affects children's cognitive development, there take the case of games. We know that through games, they will develop the attentional skills and they learn how to transfer those attentional skills to other tasks. And they develop divided attention because they want to do multitask, so they have to divide their attention to various stimuli to succeed at video gameplay. As well as this divided attention, another skill, that is spatial skills, also improve when children play video games that require visualization of spatial fields. Then the next layer, that is the macrosystem. It is the largest and most distant collection of people and places to the children that still have significant influences on them. This ecological system is composed of the children's cultural patterns and values, specifically their dominant beliefs and ideas, as well as political and economic systems. For example, children who are growing up in war zone areas, their experiences will be different and their developmental pattern is different than the children who are growing up in peaceful environments. They may become so aggressive, violence, some kind of fear may be in their mind. Then comes to the next layer, that is the chronosystem. It adds the dimension of time which demonstrates the influence of both change and constancy in children's environments. The chronosystem may include a change in family structure, parents' employment status, as well as immense society changes such as economic cycles and wars. And now we have faced the pandemic situation. How this pandemic situation affects the learning style of the children, the parents' job, how they lose the job, and how it affects the socio-economic status of the family, which in turn affects the growth of the child. By studying the various ecological systems, Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory is able to demonstrate the diversity of interrelated influences on children's environment. Take the case of the birth of new siblings that will create some kind of tension in the elder sibling. When the parents got divorced, that creates negatively in the mental development of the child. And when the parents were transferred, the children will affect negatively because they lose their earlier friends, they want to make more contacts, and they have to understand about the new environment. And take the case of socio-economic status also. If it comes down, it will negatively affect the growth of the child. If the parents got promoted, then the socio-economic status will improve. It will positively affect the development of the child. Now we will think what are the educational implications of this bioecological perspective. How do we prepare teachers and educational leaders to facilitate an inclusive classroom? And this perspective helps the teacher to understand the background of the learner, understanding student learning needs and styles, and teach new concepts by using student vocabulary. And more than that, we can see that the classroom is diverse in nature, so that we can integrate diverse study practices, and there occurs or emerges the need of adopting culturally responsive pedagogy, and the teacher plays a major role in determining meaning and sensitivity in the classroom. The teacher development and training also should be the thrust areas where we have to give training to them, and the thrust needs to be placed on nurturing the nurturers. And here we can say that children seek opportunities for cognitive stimulation, purposeful social exchange, emotional development, and cultural tolerance. In order to bring the needs of children center stage, we must first ask certain questions such as whom we teach, what we teach, how we teach, when we teach. And when we ask these self questions to ourselves, we know how to improve the teaching and how this bioecological perspective is very much important. Through this video, you have studied what is the meaning of bioecological perspective, what are the different layers of bioecological perspective, and how these different layers helps in the interaction of the environment and the child in their developmental process. And last, we have seen what are the educational implications of bioecological perspective in classroom situation, as well as how teachers should mold themselves according to this perspective.